3 p.m. here in Cairo. Time for our news bulletin. I'm Mahistira and I have all the pleasure to be working today with my dear colleague Mirna Al-Ghaznawi. Good day, Mirna.
Hello, Mahistira. Hello, dear viewers. And we're going to start our news bulletin with the headlines. President El-Sisi meets his Irish counterpart on bilateral cooperation in issues of mutual concern. Israeli occupation warplanes found Syria as troops reportedly advanced deeper into the country. At least 29 Palestinians martyred in the latest massacre by the occupation forces in northern Gaza.
Welcome back. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi today continued his visit to Dublin, where he was received by Irish President Michael Higgins. Upon his arrival at the Irish Presidential Palace, the President signed into the European country's historic record of guests. The President then met his Irish counterpart in the attendance of senior officials from both countries on enhancing bilateral ties and coordination on a number of regional and international issues of mutual concern. Later on, the President is scheduled to hold talks with Irish Prime Minister Simon Harris and a number of Irish businessmen on boosting cooperation in different fields, particularly in the economic front. The head of state arrived yesterday in Ireland, the third and final leg of a European tour which took him to Denmark and Norway.
Also, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi met today Minister of Foreign Migration and Egyptian Expatriates Affairs, Badr Abdel-Ati, in his capacity as the chairman of the Permanent Committee on Human Rights in Egypt. The minister submitted to the President the third executive report by the National Strategy for Human Rights, reviewing the progress made on the implementation of different axes of the strategy over the past year. The strategy mainly aims at promoting the human rights drive on the political, economic, social, and cultural levels.
Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli today shared a weekly cabinet meeting on important social, political and economic files. The cabinet reviews the possible outcomes of a European tour currently conducted by President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, in addition to the Prime Minister's participation on behalf of the President in the Doha Forum, along with Madbouli's visit to Port Said in a field inspection of developmental projects there. The meeting will tackle intensified efforts for curbing the inflation, increasing expenditure on the health, education and social protection sectors, tightening market control, ensuring the availability of food commodities, and also continuing work at different national development projects.
Minister of Foreign Migration and Egyptian Expatriates Affairs Badr Abdel-Ati today reiterated Egypt's firm stance in support for the Syrian state, its sovereignty and territorial integrity. The minister's assertion came in a phone call with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. The two top diplomats agreed on the importance of adopting a comprehensive political process in Syria based on the inclusion of all national parties, paving the way to restore stability in the Arab country. Abdel-Ati also affirmed Egypt's rejection of the Israeli seizure of the Syrian buffer zone and adjacent positions, branding the move as a further occupation of Syria's lands and flagrant violation of its sovereignty.
Syria's new transitional Prime Minister Mohammed al-Bashir said it was time for stability and calm in the country. He also called today for Syrians who have sought refuge abroad to return to their homeland following the ouster of President Bashar al-Assad. Also, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken urged all nations to support an inclusive political process in Syria. Mohammed al-Bashir was appointed as the transitional head of the Syrian government to run the country until the 1st of March.
The Kremlin said today that it wanted to see rapid stabilization in Syria, criticizing Israeli occupation strikes and its creation of a buffer zone along the occupied Golan Heights. It added that Russia was continuing to discuss the fate of its military infrastructure in the country with Syria's new leadership. Separately, Russia Foreign Ministry spokeswoman said that her country's facilities and assets in Syria were protected by the norms of international law. She urged all sides in Syria to adopt a responsible approach to restore security and stability as soon as possible.
The Israeli occupation forces carried out a wave of heavy airstrikes across Syria as its troops advanced deeper into the country, and the Israeli defense minister claimed that occupation forces had destroyed Syria's navy. The Israeli occupation troops said that it carried out more than 350 strikes in the Syrian territory over the last 48 hours, hitting most of the strategic weapons stockpiles in the country. The occupation forces said the targets included air defense systems, military airfields, missile depot, and dozens of weapons production sites in Damascus and other cities.
The Palestinian Health Ministry said today that an overnight Israeli occupation airstrike in northern Gaza Strip left at least 29 people martyred, including women and children, and the latest massacre committed by the occupation forces. In another strike in central Gaza this morning, at least 7 people were martyred when an Israeli occupation warplane struck a house in Nusayrat refugee camp. According to the United Nations and the Palestinian Health Ministry, the occupation genocide war on Gaza, which started on October 7 last year, has left at least 44,786 people.
The UN General Assembly will vote today on a draft resolution that seeks an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, a symbolic gesture after the U.S. previously vetoed a similar action in the UN Security Council. In addition to calling for an immediate, unconditional and permanent ceasefire, the draft resolution seeks the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages and accommodation of the United States. The resolution also demands immediate access to widespread humanitarian aid for the citizens of Gaza who have been subjected to more than a year of genocide war by the Israeli occupation forces, especially in the besieged north of the territory.
Russia said today that Ukraine launched a series of strikes on a convoy of cars which had been used to transport experts from the International Atomic Energy Agency. This came after Ukraine said that a missile strike hit Zaporizhia, killing at least 6 people and wounding more than a dozen, as Russia steps up attacks in southern regions partially under its control. More details in this report.
Ukraine announced today that rescuers were working to find people under the rubble of a building destroyed in a Russian attack that killed 6 people the day before. The attack that destroyed a medical clinic and an office building in Zaporizhia was the latest in an intensifying series of strikes on southern Ukraine, reinforcing fears of a new Russian offensive in the area. Ukrainian Interior Ministry said the death toll had risen to 6 people, adding that another 22 people were wounded in the attack, including a 5-year-old girl. Also today, Russia accused the Ukrainian armed forces of attacking a car used to transport experts from the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, on December 10th, saying someone could have been killed. IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi said on the day of the incident that a drone had hit and severely damaged an official vehicle of the agency on the road to Ukraine's Russian-controlled Zaporizhia nuclear power plant on Tuesday Thursday, but that there had been no casualties. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said at the time that the strike was a deliberate Russian attack that showed Moscow had total disregard for international law and institutions. Russia captured the Zaporizhia plant, Europe's biggest nuclear power station, soon after its forces went into Ukraine in February 2022. Each side in the 33-month-old war has since accused the other of shelling the plant and endangering nuclear safety.
South Korean police said today that security guards were blocking a raid on President Yoon Suk-yeol's offices to investigate his brief imposition of martial law. Yoon is already banned from foreign travel as part of an insurrection probe into his inner circle over the dramatic events of December 3rd and 4th that stunned South Korea's allies. Prison authorities, meanwhile, said that former defense minister tried to kill himself shortly before his formal arrest late on yesterday, while Kim, who is accused of suggestion to Yoon to impose martial law, was first detained on Sunday and later formally arrested on charges of engaging in critical duties during an insurrection and abuse of authority to obstruct the exercise of rights.
Minister of Irrigation and Water Resources Dr. Hani Suleiman reviewed with a number of international officials steps to prepare a regional project for water desalination within the framework of an initiative to enhancing adaptation with climate change. During the meeting, Dr. Suleiman presented current procedures to launch the pioneering project, which aims to applying the most advanced technology in water desalination field, with the participation of Egypt, Jordan, Tunisia, and Morocco. The meeting came on the sidelines of the conference of the parties to the UN Convention to combat desertification taking place in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia.
Egypt's bourse edged higher today amid purchases by local investors against sell-offs by the Arab and foreign investors. The market capital of listed companies reached £2.2 trillion at transactions that stood at £7.5 billion. The benchmark index EGX 30 rose 0.48% above the 30,340 points mark, while the equal weighted indices EGX 70 and EGX 100 climbed 1.11% and 0.86% respectively.
Moving to the sports news, where Al-Ahli football mission arrived in Qatar today, where they start warming up for their Intercontinental Cup semi-final clashing against Brazilian side Botafogo or Mexico's Pachuca. Copa Libertadores champions Botafogo face Pachuca in the tournament quarterfinals today, less than 3 days after clinching their domestic league title. Botafogo beat Sao Paulo 2-1 to clinch the Brazilian league and become only the third team in the country to grab the national and continental titles in the same season. The winner of Saturday's fixture will have a chance to play UEFA Champions League winners Real Madrid in the final next week.
Liverpool's maintained their 100% record in the season Champions League and have a healthy lead at the top of the standings after a 1-0 win at Girona, with the only goal of the game coming from Mohamed Salah's second-half penalty. A 6th win from 6 puts Liverpool already guaranteed the Reds at place in the last 16 on 18 points, while Girona are in the 30th place on 3 points elsewhere. Kings of Europe, Real Madrid, beaten 2-0 by Liverpool last time out, have work to do to ensure their progress into the knockout phase downing Italian side Atlanta 3-2. Well, our dear viewers, with that we come to the end of our news bulletin. You were in the company of myself, Maïsi Rabia, and I had all the pleasure to be working with my dear colleague, Myrna Al-Ghaznawi. Thank you so much, Myrna.
Thank you, Mahisi. Thank you, dear viewers, and do stay tuned for more updates coming on top of the hour. Thank you for watching.